Hi everybody, it's PJ Holmertz again, the International Short-Term Program Director for AIM. I'm excited to bring you yet another spotlight on opportunities that we have for short-termers within AIM. Today, we'll be looking at the Democratic Republic of Congo and seeing how short-termers can add value to the work that the church is doing there. I hope that this will give you the tools that you need to find the right short-termers to serve alongside the church in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Today, we'll be talking to the unit leaders in the Democratic Republic of Congo, Tom and Abby Deloge. We'll also be joined by Kathleen Burns, who is our new short-term coordinator for Central Region, and Debbie McAvoy, our short-term coordinator for Europe. Just a second. Yeah. Are you sure? Oh. Did she give us any questions? Great, okay. Apparently, Debbie's internet has taken a Brexit, and so she's not able to join the call, but she's given me her questions as a mobilizer that I'll be able to ask Tom and Abby for her. So I think I hear some drums in the distance, which must mean that it's time for us to go to the Democratic Republic of Congo. So Kathleen, you're the new short-term coordinator for Central Region. And I'd love for everybody to get a chance to get to know you a little bit better and what's brought you to this role and what you're doing there.
Kathleen Burns, and I'm from Scotland, from Edinburgh in Scotland. And I've been with AIM for over 20 years. I think I first joined AIM in 1997. Came out to Uganda in 1998 and spent 2 years working as a missionary nurse in a mission hospital up north, and then I went home, went to Bible school, All Nations Christian College, and then came back to Uganda 2004, and have been involved for many years working on the Sessi Islands on Lake Victoria. Been involved in community health, discipleship, training pastors' wives, and then more recently I was asked to consider becoming the short-term coordinator. And at that point I was like, oh my goodness, I don't think so. But I prayed about it, I had others pray, and it just seemed that that's what the Lord was saying. So I've actually only been in the role for a few months, and that's mostly been in lockdown. And yeah, not many guidelines for how to start a new role in a pandemic. So I am learning. I am really learning.
That's great, Kathleen. I'm so excited that God called you to this important role and that you've taken it up and you're learning. I'd like you now to tell us a little bit more about how the opportunities in DRC fit into the overall vision of the work of Central Region.
Looking at, the vision of AIM, Christ-centered churches among all African peoples, with the priority of reaching the unreached, that the work that's going on in DRC very much is within the framework, like equipping the church leaders and being involved with mobilizing disciple makers and very much supporting ministry, pastors, the leaders, evangelists, children's workers, all of that. I think the purpose of the short-term program is really coming alongside Abby and Tom, and to help achieve AIM's vision. And they're very much involved in that. So I think, sending short-termers with a heart of being willing to serve and be involved in ministry there, coming with their gifts, whatever that is, if it's IT, children's ministry, training of pastors, leaders, whatever. I think there's very much a place there for them to come and work with the church in DRC and work towards them becoming the church that then sends out missionaries globally and to other places in DRC where there are unreached people groups.
It's awesome. Thank you so much, Kathleen. Tom and Abby, we'd love to get to know you better as well. Could you share more of your backstory and how you got to be involved in missions?
We are Tom and Abby Delage. We're from Canada, now serving in DRC. I start these conversations because it's all my fault that we're here, and it was not on purpose. Yeah, I finished grad school just before the 2008 recession hit. I was looking for government work. There was no government work. My background's in political science, so I thought, development work overseas, that's not a stretch. I found the AIM website by accident, and then I had to tell Tom I thought we should be missionaries in Africa.
Yeah, I was looking to get myself into a small church somewhere and do youth ministry and not have to worry about the financial aspect of things, with the idea of her having the cushy government job. So she hits me with this idea of coming to Africa. And at first I was like, what? That's not at all the plan. We've got this 5-year, 10-year plan seeking to live comfortably versus seeking to really and serving him, regardless of where he was leading us. So once that sunk in, I said, sure, let's go. And we discovered not only were we equipped for it, without even knowing God was equipping us for it, but we actually have this real strong passion for being here in Congo. We almost feel more at home here than we do back in Canada. And that happened fairly quickly.
Yeah, and I should add, we did come out short term at first. We did 1 year short term and then submitted our full term application while we were still out here short term, and then came back as quick as we could. So I hope that's one of the successes of the short term program. People coming back. We always like to see that.
That is definitely what we want to see happen. Yeah, tell me a bit about just your journey there in DRC. Now you've got this new role that you've been in for a few months. Talk more about the journey that you've had in ministry there.
We came out and I was working with street kids at a church-run shelter, just helping with the program development and ministry development. Did that for, 6 years?
6 years.
6 years. And then shortly after we became unit leaders, I ended up actually transitioning out of working at the shelter into joining our partner church's missions and evangelization ministry, aiming to help develop that in local churches.
And I've sort of had my fingers in a lot of different pies. I started off there's a Christian university here in Buna, which is where we live, working with their development office. When we came back full term, I was under the development office for the church more broadly as a denomination, and working on all kinds of different community projects, starting small group ministries, really just trying to engage communities, train pastors, also really involved with women's ministry. And then we had a baby, so I've been momming on the field, which is also an entire ministry. That's been a big change, and I've been doing a lot more teaching because it's easier to sort of schedule things around.
So Tom and Abby, one of the distinctives about your unit is your relationship with the church there in the DRC. Could you tell us more about that relationship and what that looks like for you guys?
Yeah, so AIM's been in Congo planting churches since 1912. And the church that we initially planted is now the SECA Church. It's an acronym for the Evangelical Community in the Center of Africa. And so we've really grown side by side the whole way. Unfortunately, whenever there's a rebellion or a war, the missionaries leave, the church carries on, but we've always come back to that same relationship, to that same church. We very much work in partnership on everything, all of our vision documents, the requisitions we put out, they're all things that we work on together with the church leadership. We really can't emphasize enough how much we are tied to the church. We are the church. There is no separation. And sometimes that means you spend a lot more time at weddings and prayer meetings and administrative meetings than you want to, but it's all about that relationship. That's what gets us in the door, and they're the ones who carry on ministry when we're gone. So it's really amazing to see.
So I think that leads into perhaps the question of, okay, if there's such a well-founded church, why are AIM missionaries still needed in Congo? We need to also consider the history of this country and how much turmoil it's been in. From the mid 90s to the mid aughts, the church was really just struggling to exist. Especially this area of the country was really in turmoil. And that really put a stall on a lot of the ministries that had been in development. So the church is at a place now where it sees in itself certain weaknesses that it knows ought to be addressed, but where to start. And we have an opportunity to come alongside them and help them develop something that's theirs.
Obviously, you guys, as unit leaders, you've got people in your unit. Tell me more about the team that you have there, maybe a little bit more about just kind of their roles and some of the things that they're involved in, the rest of your team.
Do you have Stephanie Sudman from the U.S. office? Her role specifically is more with children's ministries. What we really see for her is anyone new coming in, short-term or otherwise, would fall under sort of her umbrella. We also have who's from the Netherlands, and she's a public health nurse that's been doing HIV/AIDS awareness in the very northeast corner, almost Uganda and Sudan of Congo.
If you guys could just tell me more about where you see short-term fitting into your overall vision and how short-termers can be a help to what you're doing, and how they would be able to fit in and what their role would look like and how that brings value to your unit. That'd be great.
Yeah, we think of ourselves, I guess, more of as maybe a multi-function team. But I think that's a place where even older people, retirees, we have all kinds of people kind of coming through, giving their skills short term, but that can be so valuable where we have those gaps. So we really see short-termers fitting into sort of one of two tracks. The first being, we already talked about it quite a bit, kids to young adults ministry. There's a lot of opportunity there. There are so many young people in Congo. There's so little ministry to them specifically. And there are quite a number of Sunday schools. There are people that want to be trained to do their job better. There are people who want resources. There are people who are ready to be taught, but we only have Stephanie to teach them, and she can't do it all. For a young adults ministry, as it stands within the church right now, most young adults, if they're involved in the church at all, would be in a worship group or in a choir group. The church denominational president really has a heart for worship and really wants to see those people, those youth and young adults built into. So that would be a really great way for someone to come and build into the church and to train others to be doing that kind of ministry. With that sort of age group. Yeah, so our second track is to be equipping church leaders or discipling church leaders, however you want to phrase it. We're really looking for specialists to come walk alongside pastors and train them in whatever it is that you happen to be an expert in. So there's so much diversity in it. We could really use people that could train pastors in computer skills. Especially in the city, there's more and more of an expectation to be able to use even basic computer equipment is very new here. You can use computers to do research. You can use computers to read different versions of the Bible, to read commentaries, but they don't know how to access those resources. So really, sky's the limit in terms of that. We're looking for administrators to come and help the church. This is a growing church. There are at least 1,000 congregations. Administering that is a challenge, not to mention the more sort of traditional theological education, training in hermeneutics, ways to be ministering to people in maybe less traditional ways. How are we ministering to our communities as a whole? How are we caring for people's bodies and minds as well as their souls? So yeah, we do have that track, and it is very broad, but really equipping church leaders in ways that maybe we haven't thought of before.
Obviously, a lot of what the short-termers will be doing is engaging with the church and with leaders. What does that look like with language? How does language factor into all of the things that a short-termer would be involved in?
Short-termers would need to come with an understanding and a capability of communicating in French.
Even like a lower level French, if you can get by, if you can, survive in a market, if you can get around to what you need to say, then that's enough to get you started.
On top of that, we would be expecting them to learn either Swahili or Lingala, depending on where the placement is. Actually, language learning is a very rewarding process. The relationships that get built through the process of learning a language is really neat to see.
I know when people hear Congo, sometimes there's a concern about security. Talk more to just sort of the security concerns that a potential short-termer may have, or somebody who's recruiting a short-termer might have to work through.
I think from the outside, you can look at a country like Congo and you think it's just utter chaos. But once you're in it, especially when you've been called, there's a strange peace and comfort that that we experience. There are concerns, significant ones sometimes. The real fortunate thing we have is that in Buna, where we're based, the UN is also based. They've actually got one of their larger bases in the world, I believe, here in town. So there's areas, in this province and in the country where we don't freely travel to. But again, with the church partnership, they look out for us, and we really rely on them to give us advice and direction when it comes to ministries we want to be engaging in outside of Buna.
So we would want short-termers to know that we're here. Whatever team they end up on, their leaders are there. So they're not alone, and the entire church structure is behind us. They don't want anything to happen to missionaries. We do what we can when we can, and yeah, it has happened that they've asked us to leave because things were insecure. And so we very leisurely packed a bag and left, and everything was fine. Those are the kinds of situations that are very possible. But it's not fleeing the country under gunfire, God willing. It's, the church president saying that perhaps it's time to go on vacation.
In terms of when you guys can receive short-termers, is there a particular time of year that's best? Is it fairly flexible when people can come in?
I think the only time when there would really be sort of a structure, or I guess an intake, if you want to call it, is if someone were to be teaching specifically in a Bible school, or if they were going to be training school chaplains. Because in both those cases, then you're sort of corresponding with the school year, and we'd want someone to come in and have, it depends on their timeline as well, but it's always best if they have a few months to kind of settle in, get a little bit of trade language under their belts, get comfortable, and then really get to work in the school. So then you'd be looking at maybe coming July, August, but otherwise we are pretty flexible.
I think to add to that, I think we're hoping short-termers would be interested in coming for the longer end of a short term. Yeah. Just with how culture learning is such an essential part of being effective in ministry, that takes time. Now, depending on what ministry you're getting engaged in, sometimes you don't need to be as in depth. But if you're looking at helping a church develop a youth ministry, having an idea that you're going to plug and play something from Canada into the Congolese context, it might work while you're there, but then when you leave, it's not going to be around anymore. So there's the need to come and even almost not do anything except observe for a few months to get to see how people tick. In our short-term time, we found that it was only like at the very end when we started to feel like we understood what was happening. So we were leaving when we were like, okay, I'm feeling more effective.
The worst question to ask a missionary is what's a normal day look like, because everybody's still waiting for one to happen. So I'm not going to ask you that question, what are things that happen often enough to say that I'm seeing a pattern develop? Those types of things.
Again, it would depend a bit where exactly they're at and what their ministry is. For us here, living on the sort of national headquarters with the big wigs, we have every Monday morning at 8, there's a prayer meeting. There's a small group of maybe 10 to 15 missionaries in Buna at any given time, not just AIM, obviously, but with the Bible translators and different missions. So we get together on Tuesdays.
We also have team nights on Fridays where our small team gets together and we'll have a meal together. We'll play games or watch a movie or, just spend time in community.
There's usually Saturdays visits to different people's houses. Usually if some sort of life event has happened, they lost someone in the family, there was a marriage, a birth, the whole church community goes to visit. And Sundays obviously is church. They'll have a church that they're working with more predominantly, and that would be where they pray. Or if they're like us, a little bit more on the denominational level, then we'd find a church that could be their home church while they're here. In general, a short-termer would be plugged into a team within the church already. So either with Sunday school teachers or with university chaplain's office or something like that. So you'd have a team, you'd have maybe not an office to go to, but you would have people to go see, conversations to have. So going to the market is a production in itself. Just keeping your house functioning is work. The electricity is pretty unstable, so you can't count on a fridge. There is no such thing as shopping once for the week. But that's where you go, you build relationships, you meet people, you do your language learning, you learn more about the culture. Food, maybe it's just me, food is so much a part of my culture, and they love sharing that with you. So that's another part of your day, and that's something we understand. That's something everybody here has to do. It's part of life. Things take more time here because we don't have machines and appliances necessarily to do the work for us.
As unit leaders, we're really intentional about being there for our team. That's part of our primary ministry, is ministering to our unit members. So a big part of what a short-termer would be doing on a week-to-week basis would involve going through some sort of curriculum, having some sit-downs with Abby and I, because we want to be intentional in using their time here to help grow them in faith and grow them in giftings and ministry. Having those intentional times to talk through what you're experiencing, even vent sometimes, is very important.
Just give people a picture, a little bit of a picture of life in Buna, from transport to market shopping. What does this city of Buna kind of look like?
So we do have some pavement, which is new and very exciting. Just the sort of main drag downtown. But transport is mostly on motorcycles. We do have electricity sometimes. So we have battery systems. There is a city water system that works sometimes. So we have barrels of water storage. It's a huge, just geographically, a huge city. It just goes on and it's just growing. There's so many different tribes, so many different peoples. Unfortunately, that sort of gives us some of the big city problems. So all of us live, with walls around our compounds, and you have to be aware of yourself. But this is where the opportunities are. This is where the people are. Yeah, I wish I could say there's something magical about Buna, but it's not about Buna. It's about the people there. If you're coming to see the sights, you're going to be disappointed.
Short-termers coming there, when they come into DRC, do they come in as missionaries? Is that kind of a widely acceptable, I'm a missionary, that's what I'm doing? That's okay there?
The only difference than the normal situation is here, you're not coming in as an AIM missionary.
Right.
You come in as a SECA 20 missionary.
Yeah.
So the AIM thing, as far as the government's concerned, is who is that?
Mhm.
But SECA 20 is well recognized and well respected.
But yeah, there's no concerns about identity. We don't need to hide what we're doing. And it's better always if we're totally open, because then also if we get into trouble, the church has our back. If we're hiding that, then it becomes more difficult for them, and we're always trying to not cause more trouble for the church.
People always ask about housing for short-termers. It looks like the short-termer you have now is in an apartment. Is that on the same compound as you guys? Different compound? What does short-term housing generally look like?
Yeah, so she sort of has what would be our ideal situation. She's on the same church compound as us. We can see her window actually from ours. So she's very close, but with her own, it's a one-bedroom, sort of hybrid one-bedroom studio apartment, because it has a kitchenette, but not a full kitchen. But yeah, she's got indoor plumbing, which is not always a given here, but is what we would have for a short-termer. You will have indoor plumbing, indoor kitchen, but living very much in community. So it's not really a treat so much as it is an opportunity to really get to know people and just their daily life and the way that they live all the time.
Obviously, we're chatting with you guys on the internet. It seems like you have some the internet happens at least occasionally there.
Yeah.
How does that generally work out just in terms of communication and that type of thing?
It's improved a lot over the years. Now, most of the time, we've got good internet. That's not to say that we can count on it. Sometimes you get some frustrating periods of time where you're like, I really need to send this email now, and the internet's just down. But that's part of life here.
But yeah, to stay connected with your family, your church. I mean, we're sending videos back and forth, which we never were able to do before. And that's been really amazing.
One of the questions that people often ask as well is just about immigration. How does that work?
When you're coming from wherever you're a resident, you can apply at the embassy or the consulate there. You would apply for just a visitor visa. The longest you can do that for is 6 months. And then if you are staying longer than 6 months, we would renew once you're here in Buna. And our church secretary would take care of that. And we work that into your budget and everything else. So it hasn't been terribly difficult, but it does depend a bit on sort of the political situation sometimes. So it can take months to get a visa if you're applying from a country that has recently maybe had a disagreement with Congo. So that's something to be aware of maybe for mobilizers, that you need to start the process early sometimes. It comes in the end, but it takes some time, and there's paperwork that you need from Congo. So again, church relationship, SECA handles the paperwork that we need from this side.
That brought up a question for me. What does the arrival process look like?
Usually we fly into Uganda, into Entebbe, and then from Entebbe, Mission Aviation Fellowship has flights, or had flights 2 or 3 times a week straight to Bunya. And then we would meet whoever at the airport, and also walk you through the process of Bunya Airport, because you have to go see and talk to a certain number of officials and shake a lot of hands. Yeah.
The process has changed a bit periodically in the past couple of years. So I think what we can guarantee is that on our part, anyone that would be looking to come out, we would make sure they're well versed in what to expect and what steps they will be taking at that given time. Because especially for new people, it's a stressful part of it. You're in a new country, new countries along the way, under scrutiny that you're maybe not used to. So we do what we can to help people understand what kind of questions they'll have and what the process is going to look like, just so that they're less surprised by things.
Anything else from you guys? Anything that we've missed? I just want to make sure that we've covered everything that Tom and Abby, you feel is important about what you're doing and what we want people to come and do there.
I think our point in general is just that there's so much opportunity here, there's so much potential here, and that we're happy to talk about opportunities. We're happy to talk about new things that we can be doing. And we're so tight with the church. They're happy to talk about it too, because they know AIM, they know what we're about and what we do. So I mean, I guess in general, it's just an invitation.
I think the key theme for any short-term ministry here is partnership, working alongside existing church leaders, and helping them in the ministry and vision they have. We have experiences and giftings that we can come with and come alongside them and help strengthen them in what they're doing.
Thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate you guys and your time. So yeah, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you. Lovely to see everybody.
Once again, thank you so much for watching this video. I hope that it's given you the tools that you need to find the right short-termers to come alongside Tom and Abby and the church in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I'd like to remind you that if you have any questions about this placement or any other placements on the field, to start your inquiry by going to the short-term coordinator of the receiving region. In this case, it'll be Kathleen Burns. They'll be the best person to give you the right information in a timely manner and connect you to the unit leaders or field facilitators at the right time. Thank you so much for all that you're doing to find out how you can resource and mobilize short-termers who will be coming to serve with us on the field. The International Short-Term
Perspective and AIM's perspective.
No, seriously, if you can find a child.
Oh, this has been great, actually. I've learned so much about what's happening in DRC.